Is Nicole in the car too?
Hello, everybody.
Yep.
Yeah, she's in a car too. Anyway, hello, everybody. This is the next episode of the Site Crusader. And today on the show, we're going to have a part 2 of our narcissism in relationships episode. We went through a lot of information last week with when Tracy was on co-hosting. And so I thought, you know what, to do this, some due diligence, I wanted to do another one to where we have more of an open forum and get into the therapeutic side of things, because we got into an hour of the show last week and we didn't get into any of the therapeutic options. So I want to do that today. And today here with me is the lovely Nicole, who's my sister-in-law, for those of you who don't know. She has her Trump shirt on.
I gotta get the word out there.
And the always wonderful, you're doing a good job. And we also have Shauna with us today, who's, for those of you who don't know, she is my regular co-host on my political podcast called The Expendable Show. So she's talking to, it looks like she's just talking to herself. She's talking
Sorry,
to
I'm
herself.
talking to the munchkins.
So what we're going to do, so I'm going to start off with some promotional information. So for those of you who like my show, who watch my show, like, subscribe, ding the bell, and be my friend. I just want a friend. I just need one. Or don't know me, I did just have my second book released this week, so I'm going to throw that up on the screen so everybody can see it. There it is, my new book, The Swiss Effect. If you're into international politics, which I'm kind of a nerd, so probably nobody is, but there's my book. It's available on Barnes & Noble and Amazon as of right now. Probably pretty soon you'll be able to order it from Walmart and Kmart and places like that. But we're at the big ones, so that's all that matters. Everybody buy it so I can be a New York Times bestseller and I can be on TV and tell everybody what to do. So there's that. Okay, so to start off, I'm just going to give a quick recap of what we talked about last week. So this is going to be a super real fast recap. So we had gone through like the symptoms of what a narcissist is. And, you know, we know that they have a high importance for themselves. Generally, they do it because they have low self-esteem. They think they're privileged and deserve special treatment. And, you know, they make their achievements seem bigger than what they really are. And, you know, just on and on and on and on, just similar traits like that, where they find ways to pump themselves up to kind of mask the issues that they have in their own self-esteem. So why are you okay? Yeah, get out of here. So we have that. We also went into the parts of the brain that are affected. I'm not going to go back over that because it's always boring. But that's my favorite part because I like brains. I'm kind of like Hannibal Lecter a little bit. And then we went into some of the causes. So we do know that there is no known like cause for narcissism. It's not an exact cause. It can be triggered. It can be brought out. It's kind of like a lot of other situations where you don't exert it until something has happened that's caused you to do that. It's almost like a self-defense mechanism. But we also know that there's absolutely zero cure for this. And I'm going to get into that a little bit deeper as we go, because I think it's significant and important. So we will get into some of the new information now. And then, ladies, you guys can jump in and share your stories as you please. So I want to touch on like the victimization, like it. So if Nicole, you said that you've had some situations and some experience with narcissistic people. So I kind of want to touch on like what therapeutic options you would have as someone who has gone through, a narcissistic abusive relationship. Um, so what kind of happens for the victims is their nervous system stays in this like fight or flight kind of realm where you don't know what to do. So that could cause you to just freeze and you just shut down. And that happens a lot because your anxiety is so high for trying to, continually impress and please the narcissist that your nervous system's just in this I don't know what to do. And that tends to happen a lot when people are in narcissistic relationships. um it's kind of a dangerous situation because that's going to root deep into your being, and you're going to have long-term effects for it. Nicole, does that sound like something that you understand and can relate to?
Yeah, actually. And it does last a long time once you're out of that abusive relationship, because once you start to get into another relationship, it kind of carries over into that, even though that person is not a narcissist.
Right.
And you always have a tendency for always apologizing as well. Like, you say sorry for the
Right.
most asinine things ever. Like, you could spill a coffee and say, I'm so sorry. And the other person would be like, why are you saying sorry for that? So there is intense lasting effects into your future, even without that person.
I never really thought about that, where you're going to be constantly like apologetic. So I'm going to try to remember that. Shauna, what do you think?
Sorry, I was at a red light. I mean, I would say from the close personal friends that I had, they were definitely very always apologetic, always second guessing everything. Like, it could never be okay, like, hey, let's make plans, let's do this. It was because they're so used to always having to get the yes or no from that narcissistic person to just make a decision. You just always see them like not really being like, just, not really being able to make decisions on their own. They struggle with that because they're just so used to always someone else being in control. So having to take that control back, it was a struggle for them. And I've seen, my sister was in a relationship for 13 years where it was physical and mentally, emotionally, all of it. So 13 years she was in that, and then it took her another 10 years to get out of that mindset. It's very
Right.
hard.
So would either one of you, would it be safe to say that you're just constantly walking on eggshells?
Absolutely. Yep.
High anxiety, for sure. High anxiety.
Right.
I would even say a certain level of PTSD, obviously, depending on how bad the narcissism was,
Right.
but definitely like PTSD, because, just like how Nicole said, you always constantly want to apologize. That's a certain level of PTSD because you're so used to that person becoming irate when something doesn't go their way. So the instant it, like, just to want to be like, I'm so sorry, like, it's, you're dealing with PTSD. It's a lot.
So Nicole, is if you were to get the wrong answer in that relationship, what did you fear? What's caused you to think that way, to where you have to walk on eggshells? Is there a repercussion that would usually happen?
Yeah, just the down talking, like you're an idiot or you never think about anybody except for yourself. It's
Right.
almost like gaslighting. So it's like they
Okay.
try to turn it around on you, like you're the problem. They're acting that way because it's you. You made them act that way. And it's just it's a mind game. And you start to like second guess yourself and say, oh my gosh, so maybe it is me. Like maybe I'm just not being empathetic enough, or I'm not thinking about the other person's feelings enough.
Right. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And, you know, when you are always being talked down to, or, you know, being belittled, you know, you're going to go into that fight or flight kind of mechanism. You know, either you're going to say, I can't do this, or you're going to go, oh, I don't know what to do, and just freeze up, and you're going to be stuck. You're going to be stuck in that situation.
Yeah, and just to throw this out there, because I know you know, my situation and everything. There is a myth out there that narcissism is only in grown men and women. That is not the case. Narcissism could be in children as well. And
That is very true.
yes, from my personal experience, I do have an older child from my previous marriage that your brother and I do not share. That he became an amazing stepdad to. I personally feel like he has a narcissistic personality disorder. And that was a whole new battle too, because due to the way he was, our oldest daughter had lasting effects to that. And honestly, within the past, I want to say years, she's really been able to get more comfortable and be her own person and not second guess herself and value herself more. So it can happen with siblings and children as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I actually was going to cover that for a little bit here. So just to go into that, so one of there, like Nicole said, that children are prone to, you know, being, you know, victimized by narcissistic behavior, which could cause them to develop and root their own narcissistic behavior. So that can happen a lot, because a lot of narcissism is learned behavior, and there are traits that you can, as a child, that you take in, like this is the atmosphere that I'm used to. This is how I'm supposed to be. And so they take root of that, or they use that as their own method to hide their own inefficiencies. And so there's a lot at play. Kids can get screwed up real fast. You know, especially when they have these little like, you know, little signs that pop up here and there. And it's easy as a parent to just say, that's kids being kids. And we will miss a lot of stuff. And, you know, it's not to blame anybody, because you'd have to follow your kid around all day, every day, in order to get it right. And that's just not feasible in the world. Shauna, have you ever had any experiences with kids that may be exerting narcissistic behavior?
A special needs teacher for 30 plus years and a foster care parent for almost 50 years. She just retired last year. So to see the amount of different children come into her care of all ages, sizes, races. Think Papa, Mama's on the phone. And you definitely see it. Obviously, the children coming from. Give me a second.
Kids.
Yeah, right. I mean, I know where she's going with that. You know, with foster kid situation, it's going to create those situations, especially as you're in a home with multiple kids, and these kids are kind of toggling to figure out who's at the top of the hill. And so you're going to develop a quick situation.
Definitely.
What?
I mean, obviously the kids coming from, obviously all of these kids are coming from bad situations to the point that they're being removed from the home. But especially the kids in more abusive homes. And I've seen it on both ends. Like, you know, typically I feel like a lot of people like to put it on men that they're narcissists, but women can be very much narcissists too. So seeing kids come from homes where, you know, they didn't have a dad, it was only a mom. And in my opinion, I felt like it was a little worse with them coming from the mothers than having the narcissistic fathers in the household, just simply because, you know, like the mothers are supposed to be the nurturers, so really lacking on that nurturing feel that you're supposed to get from the mom, you know, those coddles and things like that that you would normally get from a woman. You would definitely see it. I feel like it was a more aggressive situation with them having the narcissistic moms.
Right. So I'm going to go over some of the treatment. So right now, let's look at, you know, the treatment for the victims of this disorder, because there's a lot. This is something a lot of women have gone through. It's more and more common as the years go by, I think, and we'll get into it a little bit deeper here in a second. But one of the things that if you go through this type of situation, I think that regardless of what level you're at with it, you should definitely go through cognitive behavioral therapy. There's nothing wrong with that. You're not medicating yourself or anything. You're just sitting down with a therapist and you're unloading this. And you're going through and how is this affecting you and what can you do to kind of die down the effects of it. And anytime you sit down with your therapist and you have the opportunity to just talk about how you're feeling, that's gonna pay off for you. It allows you to, like, you know, just verbalize your thoughts and your feelings and maybe even identify some of your own behaviors. Because if you verbalize something, then you go, wow, I am doing that. And you tend to have self-realization when you verbalize things. I do it all the time. I talk to myself all the time. And then I'm like, whoa, what did I just say? And it works for me. A lot of people probably think I'm just a crazy lunatic walking down the street, or like my dog thinks I'm nuts, but it works. It's a method I use. I use it all day, every day. I'll be up in my office by myself and I will talk to myself. But it's just a therapeutic tool that I use. And you know, so what this also does when you sit down and you talk about these things, it's going to allow you to reclaim your own power. You're going to empower yourself, and you're going to be able to diminish the effects of that victimization. And I think that's going to be highly important, especially for women who it's very hard to bounce back from when you're beaten into the ground mentally and physically or whatever. It's hard to get back up and dust yourself off with confidence. It's very hard to do. And so I think when you go into therapy and you allow yourself to reclaim that mental power and give it back to yourself, that's going to be a huge thing. It's going to help get rid of the anxiety. It's not going to get rid of the anxiety, but it's going to diminish the anxiety. The effectiveness of the anxiety is not going to be as high. You're going to start to work through your own self-doubt. You're going to gain that confidence back in yourself. You're going to challenge your own negative self-perceptions, and to where you're going to wake up and you're going to go, wow, you know, this isn't my fault. I'm not that bad of a person. And I'm actually a good person. I was actually trying to do the right thing. You know, the situation just was a bad situation and it's not your fault. So it's a hard thing to kind of pick yourself up off the floor after going through something like that. And, you know, did you see that to be true, Nicole?
Yeah, when I started actually doing therapy, I was in it for a good year, and actually started talking about things. I started having a lot of self-realization too of things that I did as well. And
Okay.
also it would kind of open the door of things that I did because I was hearing what my therapist was saying. So it was kind of like, okay, well, yes, I was a victim, but then I started picking up narcissistic behaviors as well. And
Yes.
that was kind of big for me because I was like, oh, holy crap. And then I think once you start to realize that and you're open to that and you're also open to seeing that and hearing that, it also helps you start to diminish those behaviors as well. And it also opens the door of who you're surrounding yourself with as well. That will also start
Right.
having you realize who in your family or who in your friend circle is narcissistic as well.
Right. I think that's a good way to look at it, Nicole. I think you kind of nailed it right there.
Would you say it's the
So there's another.
because of
Go
the
ahead.
things that happened to you? Or do you just feel like you just picked it up because of the environment?
I think I've picked it up as well. I also had in my opinion, there may be some family members that don't agree with me, but I have a narcissistic mother. And I feel like I've picked up those behaviors. And I think that also opened the door for me to get myself into those relationships because I was like, this is normal. And then I would pick up some behaviors from who I was with as well. So it was like, yes, I was a victim, but I had some narcissistic tendencies as well.
Very nice.
That
Very
was
nice.
that
Well,
was my
not
only
very nice,
question.
but
Well, right.
okay.
Not nice. That's great.
So the next form of therapy, and there's a bunch of different forms of therapy that is suggested, but these are the most common ones. So you have trauma focused CBT. So that's basically the one where we were talking about that it could be for the kids and like the teenage years kids, to where you can have them recollect, like they go back and they replay this and they work it out. Like, this is what happened and this is why it's not your fault. This is what happened and this is why it's not your fault. How did you feel during these moments in this traumatic experience, and how do we work through them? So that's a big one for kids, because a lot of kids don't know how to process these types of things, and so they need help kind of sorting through their thoughts and their feelings and this trauma that it happened, and now it's starting to root itself into your body and into your soul, and you have to you can stop this if you catch it quick enough. And it's difficult, but it can happen. So it's always good for you as the parent, if you have a child that's experiencing this and they're going through therapy. I think it's a good idea to have the non-abuser parent to go in support. I think that's going to be huge, for the child, to where they know that, hey, no matter what, my mom is always going to be in my corner to help me and make sure I'm in a safe space. So I think that's a very important thing. And I highly recommend that if you have children that are going through this narcissistic abuse pattern, that you get them the help as quick as possible and let them get these thoughts and emotions out. Otherwise, because what do kids do? They bottle up emotions. It's their natural response to everything. And you have to pry their feelings out of them, especially when they get into the teenage years. And the teenagers are so brittle that if you allow them to, here's my favorite Canadian, Rob, jumped in the comments today. Hello, Rob. So when you let these emotions bottle up, and they're not going to go, they're going to just explode out. And so you have to give them that safe space to get that out of their body. So it's just going to create so much positivity to let them release that. So then we're going to go into prolonged exposure therapy, which that's a little bit more severe to deal with, because that's for like we talked about, the PTSD portion of things, where it's very, where you basically, as a victim, you're going to avoid the triggers. So you're going to avoid anything that can trigger you. And anybody with PTSD is going to tell you the same thing. Like, I just avoid situations that trigger my emotions. So, for me, it's large crowds. I do not do good in large crowds. It makes me panic and get anxiety. And then I got to look at every single person in the crowd going, who's the threat? Who's the threat? Who's the threat? Who's the threat? And so the PTSD is a serious thing. And we have to identify that and try to face those things instead of avoiding them. If we continue to avoid triggers, we're never going to get past them. And you're going to continue to spend the rest of your life dodging life, and you can't live that way. We're not made that way. So we have to start to, incorporate a therapy that's going to attack the PTSD and not allow the PTSD to engulf us. So I think going through the prolonged exposure therapy is a good way to go, to really sit down and just attack that therapy and get this thing sorted out and get this PTSD to where it's manageable instead of where it's managing you. So Nicole or Sean? No, let's go with Nicole first. Nicole, so did you have any long-term PTSD issues with that situation?
I don't know if I would call it PTSD necessarily. I mean, I guess you could say it is. Yeah, because like even now, like if I get an argument or something with with Nick, I will start to like internally think like, what did I do wrong? Like I would start to put it on myself and think like, say for instance, he has a really rough he has a rough position at work sometimes. And, as soon as he comes in the door, he wants to decompress. He doesn't want to be like bamboozled and like me all up in his face. And of course, I haven't seen him all day. So I'm like, hey, how's your day? Da, da, da. And he's like, oh, it's fine. Like, and it's not even like his tone or anything, but I can make it into like a bigger deal. Like, did I say something wrong? Did I do something? Like, why is he acting like this? Like, it turns into like this snowball effect, which then could lead into an argument. Because of course I'm gonna be like, why are you so cranky? I'm not cranky. Like I just got home from work. So, I mean, that could be an argument. Yeah. Because then I think, he may not have a tone, but then I turn it into he has a tone because I didn't like the way it came out.
Right.
And then it's like, well, I did something wrong. What I do? Like, are you okay? Like, are you mad at me? Like, it's, yeah. And it
Well,
sucks.
the good thing about it, though, Nicole, is you're conscious of it, and that even though that this is something that has developed because of some trauma, that you've been able to, look at yourself and evaluate yourself and go, okay, so this is part of my traumatic response, and this man he doesn't really deserve that, because it's not his fault. So I have to, it's okay to think that way, to go, oh my gosh, what did I do? But it's going to be beneficial if you're conscious and you can stop that thought right there and go, okay, he's telling me that it's just, hey, work was a little rough today. And you just have to say, okay, that's what it is, because that's what he says it is, because this is not the same person that caused my trauma.
Yeah, and not take it personal, because then like, and sometimes I do it. I'm like, well, what, are you mad at me? Like, no, I just had a bad day. And it's like, okay, like I'm sorry. And then, I'll let him have his time so he can decompress. Cause I have to remember that too. Like he needs his time. Just because, I don't like his answer doesn't mean that he's being a narcissist, because, then I think it's my fault. That's not the case. He's not.
Right. So I probably do this to Shauna at work all the time.
Okay.
Like all the time. Where I just like come in and she's just like, I don't even have to say nothing. She's like, you just need to just calm down. You need to come over here and just calm down. Right? All the time. I can see your head's getting red.
Oh my God, that's awesome. That does happen. When you do get mad, your top of your head does get red.
It's like a thermometer.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. And so like taking on more responsibility at work, I have to deal with the public more, and I hate it. I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say that's also the flip side thing of it too, is coming from a relationship with that kind of narcissistic stuff. like even in your job, like it has some lasting effects in it, and it's
Right.
just crazy.
And those are the good ways to test it out. I mean, I don't want to, make your life like a social experiment, but at the same time, like you can start to, the more social you are with people, the more you can say,
Mhm.
okay, I'm reacting a certain way to certain things because it's triggering this. And then,
Yeah.
it allows you to kind of practice on, on people that are in your circle, and that could help better, your situation at home, at the same time. So I, I think practicing, your own mental health is a good idea. You have to exercise your brain just like you exercise your body. So,
Yes.
what do you got? Christmas presents? What are you eating? A box? She should get mad. She can't talk. She can't say anything to me.
No, she's got you on mute
So,
too.
yeah, that's true. So now let's get into the narcissist side of things. Let's look at it through the narcissist eyes. So, and that's something that, so I've been called a narcissist in probably 100% of every relationship I've ever been in my life. So either I am a narcissist or it's the most overused word on the planet. And I feel like every guy that I know has been called a narcissist at some point. And so surely 100% of the population can't be narcissist. However, statistically speaking, according to the Mayo Clinic, which is who I always pull my information from, so if you don't agree with me, go sue them. So somewhere between 0.5% and 5% of all of the population has a narcissistic personality disorder. So 0.5%, you have a higher percentage of having ADHD. So for me, with the amount of people that throw around the word narcissism, you're looking at a very, very, very small portion of the population. And so it either tells me that it's highly misdiagnosed or underdiagnosed or just not reported at all, or it's not as common as what we'd like to think it is, that there are other factors or other conditions or other things that mimic narcissistic personality disorder that isn't 100% narcissistic personality disorder. So I have my theory on that. Now, going back into the statistics, I can't say statistics today, but 50 to 75% of men are more likely to have narcissistic personality disorder. So 50 to 75%. That is a large population of that 5%. So, I mean, is it like in that is it in that chromosome or what? Like, what's going on? Like, we don't have enough information, but it seems to heavily affect men more. Now, I have a theory on that, where when we look at the hierarchy of the home, you have a man that constantly has to stand on his own 2 feet all the time for everybody in the house. So he automatically is going to an elevated position in the family. So that is going to start to develop these narcissistic behaviors. So our family dynamic creates narcissism. That's where I'm going with this. So we almost self-implode it in our own nature. Now, I'm going to go a step further, and after I get done with the statistics, that is going to make you're going to be like, this is the most ridiculous perspective I've ever heard. But I'm going to say it anyway because this is my show. But let's go into the women. So 4.8 to 5% of women exert narcissistic personality disorder, like Shauna. So I'm just kidding. See, I can't win. I can't win. So that's a low number, but it's still, it's higher than I thought it was going to be, even though it's only 4.8 to 5%, which is fine. The good thing is, women, well, I'm not even going to say that, because women can be just as ruthless as a man when it comes to personality disorders, period. So I can't downgrade it because they're just as deadly, just in their own different way. You think? Well, I won't ask Nicole because she's walking through the school right now.
Well, no, I'm
walking
outside
through something.
school. Yeah.
All right.
I got Charlie. Here's Charlie. Say hi, Charlie.
There's Charles.
I actually agree with that. I can see where you're going with that. I don't know.
I mean, well, it's just like what you said, Nicole, that like you felt yourself start to develop like traits of narcissism, and then you self-identified and said, okay, I can't be doing that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you,
happened?
especially in like single family households. I can see where that happens because you're always thinking about you. You're always thinking about your family. You know, it's like when your kids say
no one's gonna take that off your plate.
Right. And say you're separated and you have kids, you co-parent. Well, what am I going to do for this weekend? Like, you start setting up boundaries too. And I think people mislead that for narcissism as well, because it's like, I'm setting boundaries. I'm not going to accept ABC. And then it's like, well, you're a narcissist because all you care about is yourself. Well, kind of like, I have to and I want to.
Right. So, Shauna, what do you think about that? Because you're in kind of that situation. Do you think you see some signs in yourself?
I mean, definitely now, like, but I feel like it's been created because I've had to become the decision maker for everything. It went from, okay, like shared responsibility. Now I'm a new mother, 2 small children. Now I'm the breadwinner of the house, and it just becomes to a point like I would definitely say, yeah, I probably definitely have a lot of narcissistic tendencies when it comes to my ex, but it's like, no offense, but you've kind of forced me to become this person because I've had to take on many roles. And unfortunately, I think the whole notion is like, when, especially with children, like, we're all taught that it takes a village to raise children. You can't do it by yourself. You're not supposed to do it by yourself. And when you have to, like, I think for women, it becomes more of a narcissistic thing because, like Nicole said, we are setting those boundaries. I am not allowing you to upset me anymore or bring me to a certain headspace and things like that. And it becomes narcissistic after a while because you're just like, you're not putting up with it anymore. And you're choosing to choose yourself and what's best for you. And it definitely starts to be deemed narcissistic, but I do think on the men's end, not to bash them, I do think society has given you guys a role where it's unrealistic that men can't really have or show emotion or anything like that. And I feel like just because you have to be the protector and a provider, if that's, the type of role you want to be in your household, I don't think that the mental health of a man should go unnoticed. I think the things to make sure checking in, are you okay? How are you doing today? Just like Nicole, going back to what she said, Nick had a long day at work, and he's trying to decompress. Anybody would do that when you got to come home and still, be a mom or be a parent and deal with small children, things of that nature. And that expectation that you don't never really break and you can't do this and get that, I do think it's unfair to men because you need that time too. You need to be able to do that. You can't be your best functioning self without taking care of that stuff first. What is this?
Yeah,
right.
I agree.
You can't keep your castle put together if your foundation's crumbling. Exactly. It's not eventually a man's gonna crumble. If he's carrying all this weight all the time, he's going to crumble. And it's just what happens. This is what we see with the breakdowns, and like they have to exert that energy somewhere. That anxiety has to go somewhere. And if they feel like they're being suffocated, go ahead.
I will say too, like, it doesn't really help. Like, think about men who, like, I have a brother who's amazing. Like, he quite a lot like yourself, Eric. Okay, bring me your bag. Let mommy see it. And he was the guy, like he worked all day, come home, cook, clean the house, give the kids a bath, on top of he was studying for his actual psychology degree. So things like that, while his ex-wife now at this point just sat in the house and did nothing. And granted, okay, you had to recuperate
Who you
and rest
talking
after
about?
having a child. My older brother, Maurice.
Oh.
And like I said, my brother's an awesome guy. Like everything you could think of, like, oh, he takes care of the house, the kids, he's all those things that women check off on their list. And I just feel like it got to a point, when they had to go to court and they had to get their custody stuff, and it's like, okay, we want to deem him a bad father because he walked out of the house. But it's just like, my brother's dealt with a lot. He's been in the military, he has PTSD, he's a lot of things, and it's just like he's choosing this before he harms himself or harm you or harm the baby in the house. But it's like he got demonized when what happened to Nicole? He got demonized in the courts. You got pretzels. No. And I just feel like, now as a single male trying to date again, he does display narcissistic behavior, but that's also too because he's been pushed to the brink where he doesn't have any other choice but to be that. And I think, I just find it unfair. A lot of people, a lot of my guy friends, they're having to pay child support. My other brother had to pay child support on a child for 4 years and fight with the state of Georgia to not be that custodial parent paying child support for that kid, even after showing he had a paternity test done and it wasn't his. But it's just like the notion that, okay, it doesn't matter, you're a man, you're supposed to suck it up and that it just be what it is. And I do think that's unfair. Here, go put that over there. And I do think it's unfair to men a lot of the time. And, you're saying that you're seeing it at such a higher rate. And it's just like, you have to think about the day-to-day life that men are going through. Like, it's like even men talking about maybe you dated a narcissistic woman and you're deemed, oh, you're a weak male. And why would you allow a woman to be narcissistic to you and controlling to you? And it's just those things, like you can't even, it's like you don't really have a safe space to express those things, which I feel like why we see such a high rate in men being narcissists.
Right.
I feel like you're at a very big disadvantage with everything.
So my question is, when you're exerting narcissistic behavior, what do you do? Because there's no cure. There's no cure for it. Once you've stepped into that arena of narcissism, there's no cure. So what do? You can't just go get narcissism meds. They don't make them. So either you can treat some of the symptoms, like anxiety. You can get anti-anxiety meds. You can get anti-depression meds. But as far as narcissism meds, there's no such thing. So what do? So what, as a narcissist, the best thing you can do for yourself is to educate yourself. Know your symptoms, know your behaviors, and know how to deflect them. And it's going to be bad because you're going to be in relationships where you're going to be looked at as the narcissist, and there's nothing you can do to stop it because your mind is only going to think one way, and there's no cure. So what do? Should we just throw the narcissist away?
No.
It just reminds me of Kamala Harris. It just reminds me of Kamala Harris talking about the felons. Like, oh, everybody's a felon. What do we do with the felons? We throw them away? We gonna throw the narcissists and felons away? Like, I don't think we have to have, as neurotypicals, we have to have a certain level of understanding and a kind of respect for people who are struggling with narcissism. Narcissists aren't happy being narcissists. They're struggling mentally as well. So
transparency.
They want to please people because right. And that's what it's gonna take. And Nicole, were you gonna say something before I really cut you off?
No, you're good. I was just going to say so a lot of people are probably going to have a problem with what I'm about to say, so I apologize. But I like to group it as your good narcissist and your bad narcissist. Your bad narcissist don't care. It's all about them. They're not willing to see it from any other way. Your good narcissists have to be willing to get help. They have to be willing to do therapy. They have to be willing to be self-aware and transparent. And also on the flip side, if you get in a relationship and you know those things are with that person, that you are with somebody who has narcissistic tendencies, you need to educate yourself as well, because there are going to be things that you do on purpose to trigger that person. And you have to be willing to do like couples therapy and everything. It takes work from both sides. So yes, you can deal with it, and you can have a successful relationship with somebody with narcissism, as long as that person who has narcissism is willing to educate themselves and get themselves better and work on themselves continuously. And on the flip side, that
you have
other
to be
person,
conscious. It's a consciousness.
Yes.
Self-transparency. Self-transparency is a big thing. Even if you're not narcissistic, you should just be doing it anyways. Like checking in on yourself, checking in on your mental, checking on the people around you, see how they're doing. Because a lot of the times I feel like we as people, we get so caught up in our own troubles and problems that we don't think about how our actions affect other people. So you have to be self-transparent. Like, okay, am I being an asshole today? Or am I just being overly emotional? Like, what is the case going on? Like, just even outside of the narcissism, like, you have to check on yourself and your actions, how people are reacting and feeling about it, but also too, what made you want to react and treat them like this? Like, what triggered that? And I think you have to constantly be self-transparent with yourself.
Yeah. You have to be willing to continuously work on yourself. And then, with a person that you're with, you have to consistently show empathy towards that person. Because like you said, Eric, narcissists they have a battle with themselves that we necessarily don't see or understand. Now, I will say, like, there are in some cases where the narcissist there is no helping, because they're not willing to get the help. In that case, it is what it is. Like, there's just nothing you can do.
Right. I highly agree. I think your assessment that there's two different types is accurate. Some people just don't have the want and the will to improve their situation. It's easier to stay in the mindset that they currently have. Even if it's destructive behavior, they'll still continue down that pathway. Or you can have people that are really trying to understand themselves. They're trying to understand how to work with their mental illness and still trying to make the people around them happy, even though that inside they may not fully have that feel that your partner's expecting you to have. And so you're trying to juggle that and balance it. And it's a struggle, because you don't want to disappoint your partner at the end of the day. You want to help them and you want to be useful to them. And you want to try to be as genuine as you can, even though in the back of your mind, you're going, man, I just want somebody to care. And so that's, at the end of the day, that's what narcissism is. Somebody look at me and care. And, sometimes that's all it takes, is somebody to pay you 5 minutes of attention. And you're good. So now, with that said, I would like to end my psych show talking about the spiritual side of things. So I'm going to throw a spiritual theory out there that I've already tested this theory, and 50% said, wow, that's interesting. And then the other 50% said, you son of a bitch. So here, we'll go with it and see what happens. God is the ultimate narcissist.
Ooh,
you think about what the Bible tells you to constantly do. What are you supposed to do? Everything you can to please God.
Listen, what's the line? It's that God built us in the image that He wanted us to be. That line alone,
right? We are in His light.
Screams narcissism. Like, that screams like, okay, so we're not perfect unless we're seeing in your image. So,
Right.
so a lot of people probably
So
struggle
think
with
about
that.
that. But
Yeah,
when you really sit down and think about it,
wow. I mean, you're
look,
not wrong.
I'm going to answer for that one day when I get to the pearly gates, but I'm going to plead my case. I'll be like, come on, I can't even get in unless I say, you know, these things like, hey, I'm sorry, God, for talking bad about you on earth. I know that made you mad. You know, and he's going to go, okay, I feel better. Come on in.
I mean,
So, I'm not trying to make a mockery, but God didn't put mental illnesses on this earth without reason. So it's something that it's a trait that we see over and over and over again in the Bible. And in the psychology world, in the psychiatry world, and every other the forensic psychology world, we don't see it because we're not thinking that way. And so as I've read the Bible over and over and over again, I started thinking of it in a different way. How are these people thinking? And a very, very talented author that I graduated with, she opened my eyes to it. And she brought up a good point that imagine the amount of anxiety that Moses had to go through, that he was socially awkward and he was given the task by God to lead God's people to safety. Could you imagine the amount of anxiety that he had to go through to complete that task? And then it made me think like, okay, now I need to read the Bible with the intentions of identifying their mental state and their emotions. So like that completely changed my whole perspective of what was going on at that time. And so that's when I came up with the theory. I was like, oh my gosh, everything we do in the Bible is to make God happy.
I mean,
What's
he has
more
every right to
narcissistic
be.
than that?
He has the right to be. I mean, he created the world, created us, so he gets a pass. So,
But he did a beating and die for us on the cross. So, you have to think about it in that sense. Like we owe him. But see, wouldn't that be narcissistic too? Because you did something and then like you constantly reminding us that we owe you for what you've done.
Yes. Now, also, and look what happens. Look what happens when you don't listen to God. He's massacred entire cities because he got mad because they didn't love him enough. I mean, I'm just saying.
They didn't follow his rules. Yeah. But then again, like I feel like as times have gone on, he's also like adapted, and I don't want to say less in his expectations, but he's not as narcissist if you want to use that argument. So he's learning a little. So there's that.
Maybe I'll consider that answer for a very short amount of time.
I mean, he's not doing dark crap now, so there's that. You get a rainbow.
Well, we still have to go through the book of Revelation, so there's still destruction and chaos yet to come.
I'm hoping that's way past my time. I ain't ready for that.
But I think at the end of the day, I think that somebody who has strong narcissistic behavior, they really need to find that spiritual side of them and talk to God on a daily basis. If you're not comfortable talking to therapists or talking to family members or friends, at least talk to God in the privacy of your own room and that conversation on a serious note. So, I always try to end my show that's at the end of the day, that's a safe place to be honest and just get right. Let him walk you down the path, and all you got to do is follow. So, that's my whole spiel.
Self-evaluate and pray and ask for guidance.
Yeah.
I also just want to say, if you don't have any good relationships in your life, you might be the problem. You might be the narcissist. Just putting that out there.
She ain't wrong. That's true.
Well, nobody likes me, so I guess I'm in trouble.
You're definitely the problem, but we're not going to go there. There's not enough amount of therapy could ever fix.
Except Shauna's kids think I'm awesome, so I got 2 friends.
They're children. They think everybody's great as long as they give them attention.
That is true. I mean, kids are narcissists too, if you want to go that way too. Like, they're all about their attention.
Right? They're all about themselves.
Yeah. I mean, I think we could go on a whole episode of that if you want, Shauna. I could like do a whole episode with Eric and why nobody likes him because he keeps putting himself in bad relationships.
I already got it. Close your ears. Mommy's about to say a bad word. It's because he's an asshole. That's all it is. That's it. That's it.
He's a nice asshole, though.
This is
when he
supposed to be a safe space.
It is a safe space. We know that's the way you are. We understand it. It's okay. It's good. But
I will say the first time I ever met you, I got a good vibe off of you. I'm really good at reading people. I love you. I adore you. I'm very protective over you. Yes, you do and say things that probably you shouldn't.
My headphones.
But I love you, and I don't think you're the problem in a lot of the situations that you've been in. I'll just leave it at that. Now look, I made him quiet.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, that's hard to do. That's hard to do. It's hard to do. Well, I appreciate that.
His head turning red.
That's gonna wrap. My head's. I'm sweating. Does that count?
That's your form of a blush.
I made him blush.
But that's gonna be the end of the show today. I have to watch Donald Trump's replay of his speech so he can win his election tomorrow. Trump 2024, save the world. All right. So we will be back on this show next Monday, and I will post the topic probably here in the next few days. Thanks, Rob, for all your support. And I'm sure I will see you on the next Expendable show. Yep, go Trump. There we go. Right there in the comments. But thanks, Nicole, for coming on. Thanks, Shauna, for coming on. Thanks, Kai and Zoe, for coming on. So we're out.